We'll have a good conversation.
We'll get it.
Okay, we're back. All right, okay, there we go. That's better. Are we ready, Harry? We could go.
Yeah, you can start.
Okay. Good morning. Oh my God. Welcome to Love Babs Love Talk. I'm Babs Rose Ivy. We are doing this media thing in the midst of a pandemic, people. We are doing it. And whatever the glitches is worth everything to talk to Dan Fitzmaurice from the Arts Council, the executive director. Hello, Dan.
Hey, Babs. Good morning.
And Adrian Jefferson, who is the new cultural affairs czar over at City Hall.
Hello. Good morning. Hi.
Good morning.
Hi.
So I'm so happy that you all agreed to talk to me this morning, because this actually is the first day that I'm back on air doing my show since we've been under this pandemic, COVID-19. And so thank you all for making time for me this morning. And thanks, Harry, for getting us on.
Yes.
So what I really wanted to talk about, Dan and Adrian, is, you know, I have been noticing, and maybe you have too, that it has really been the arts community that has been one of the saving graces around allowing for us to be socially distancing in place, and one, and two, really starting to fully understand how much art means to us in our communities when it is ripped away from us. I don't think people really realized and fully understood how much that meant to us until, you know, we had to give up tickets to things when things got canceled, like a domino effect. So can you talk a little bit about where the arts community is at the moment, and just talk a little bit about that, because you are at the forefront of art as an economic vehicle and as an artistic value.
Right.
It's sort of
go ahead. Look, we both want to chime in. you go, Dan.
I'll pass it to you, Adrian. You know, we get along. We always hypothetically talk about, like, what would happen if you didn't have the arts? Like, what would happen if you couldn't go to a concert, or there were no galleries, or, the architecture around us didn't exist. And in this moment of physical distancing, which is my preferred term, Babs, physical distancing, all those things are available.
That is a better term.
Even the architecture around us, like I'm actually in New Haven right now, so I could see some of the architecture, but really a lot of those built environment things are also not available to us right now. So it is a little bit apocalyptic, not just for people who are engaged in the arts, but I think it's become evident for everyone that this work in the creative sector is vital.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I feel like, I was sitting in my car the other day and I said to myself, there's always this quote that people say, what would the world be like with no art, right? It's a quote that people have said for years. Yes. And I feel like we're seeing what the world would be like with no art. We're seeing the impact of it not existing. And we also are seeing how much it plays in our everyday lives. A lot of people, especially people who are not used to, who are not necessarily in the creative sector, they just participate in the creative sector. They enjoy, what the creative sector offers, but they don't necessarily understand the economic impact that it does have within our communities. They just enjoy it. I think they're totally seeing what life is like and how dark life can be without creativity and art in our lives. And it's really unfortunate right now because the creative sector is struggling tremendously from this pandemic. And I don't know if it's being as recognized nationally or in many different ways, or even statewide. I don't know how recognized it is about the hit and the impact that the creative sector has taken.
Right.
Yes. I mean, I'm, I don't think people realize how much art and the art community brought to your everyday practical life. And I think the realization of that is quite stunning for people, that they didn't realize that art is not just, museum somewhere across town, but that art is whenever you hear live music somewhere, the art teacher that teaches your kids, music appreciation. Art is all these things that we did not fully appreciate and visibly understand how much it affected us until it was all gone. So I am quite struck by the reality of that.
Well, and also the reality of that bringing us back together, right? Like when it has come time to figure out how to come together, the artists are leading the way, which is really important to realize.
And art helps shape our culture. I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that culture part of the arts, the fact that it's in our everyday lives and the things that we do, even if we don't recognize it. It's a tremendous part of the way our communities are viewed, shaped, the activity, and even the conversations that are able to happen through arts, just that avenue. And with it missing, this is what we have.
Yes. I will say this, that people are turning towards the arts in these dire times for comfort and connection. There's so many ways that artists are using their talents to connect. That speaks to the level of creativity that we need in our everyday practical lives, but also speaks to people didn't even realize they needed that connection and are seeking out those connections vis-a-vis the arts and the artists who are giving us their talents in these times. The concerts and uploading, all these things that we can tap into to give us a little bit of, sanity and humanity.
I think that's right. Right. Do you want me to lay down some scary facts, Babs? Because I know you want to talk about the happy stuff. I can tell you're veering towards, isn't it great how artists are figuring out how to live in this world where we can't see?
Yeah. But the reality is, artists are going to take a hard hit. Artists and art venues are going to take I serve on the Arts Council board and I serve on the Long Wharf Theater board, and I feel it. So yes, Daniel, give us the truth.
I did the math on your behalf, Babs. Right. Well, what happened, right? I mean, if you remember 2 weeks ago, it wasn't but 2 weeks ago when we started. That's when we saw each other last, Babs, was at the Long Wharf kickoff.
Yes.
And, why? What a difference 2 weeks has made. But venues were beginning to slowly get shut down, right? It was, 200 people max, down to 50 people max, down to 10 people max. I mean, it just kept getting smaller and smaller. So arts organizations started adapting to all of those things. So they were losing money even before we started counting what the money lost.
Yeah.
Was. But right now, we posted a survey about a week ago. And so what we're assessing in 1 week and talking about is that artists, both individual artists, as well as organizations, lost $2 million just in that span, just in this region. And that's just with the 100 folks that took the survey. I don't know
how it's growing.
And it's growing. Well, every week that just repeats itself, right? Yep. Every week that you can't serve your audience or your students is another week. I had a stat from the state did a survey as well of all businesses. So this is just arts businesses or creative organizations. They had this stat that said that 12% of businesses were closed. But I can tell you 100% of arts organizations have been closed for the last week, if not longer. I also pulled out the national. So our sort of national affiliate is the Americans for the Arts. And so Americans for the Arts right now is saying that the sector, and that's pretty broadly defined what the creative sector is, has lost $3.3 billion so far as a result of coronavirus.
So what do you think it'll take? What will recovery look like? What could it look like? Because both of you are on the right there in the heart of arts, not only as artistic expression, but arts as an economic driver of communities and of the state. In Connecticut, I think has a fairly large artistic venue, just like any place else. You know, if the casinos are closed, if the theaters are closed, if the state house is closed, if not, Cafe 9 is closed. So what does it look like? What does recovery look like? Like, give me the dream recovery and then the reality recovery.
Okay. I was going to start with the reality. I mean, because the reality is, I know you want it in a different order, but I'm going to give you the reality first. The reality is that arts and culture sector, and not only the arts and culture sector, right, just the business sector at large, from an economic standpoint, is taking a major hit. It will take a lot of economic, it's going to take a lot of us to come together to build back up our economy. That's where we're at. We are in a very devastating moment in time, an unprecedented moment where businesses are shut down. They have laid off so many of their employees. So we are talking about, I keep comparing it to like any type of deep oppression where the entire world was in a deep economic downfall. And so now we're trying to crawl our ways out of that. So that's where we are. I mean, now what we need to do is build economic resiliency. And right now in the city, that's what we're working on. We're actually we're taking all the facts and all the data, and we're trying to see, where will we be in 6 months and how do we rebound from this? And it's going to take us all to come together. Right now, I think we need to invest, especially locally. We need to start investing locally into the businesses that have virtual opportunities, artists who are streaming virtually right now. There's ways you can still invest in the arts sector and in the business sector at large by investing in their virtual offerings as they're converting over to that platform. So I think that will help to mitigate a lot of the economic downfall. But there's no doubt about it. We are in almost like a Great Depression, right? And we're trying to avoid it being that bad. But no one knows the exact where we're going to end up at the end of this. No one really knows.
Well, and I think it's also important to say that, like, different than the Great Recession recently, which was also another of these moments for the arts community. But in the Great Recession, you could still have your venues open. You could still run a season. You could still have courses. You might have made less money, but you were still existing. Right now, the arts institutions and a lot of artists are really having a hard time just existing. So that's right. Like, a lot of organizations are looking at, furloughing or laying off their staffs. I know a lot of artists who are struggling with their own, mental health issues that are coming up around, like, what this all means for them financially and creatively. Certainly sure that's true for a lot of folks, young people who really, like, find the arts to be the thing that makes them whole and brings them joy. Sort of not being able to see your teacher for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or we don't know, 6 months is a really big deal. I think I think a lot of the things we've always been talking about, at least for sure at the Arts Council, and I know from Adrian's perspective, are still true, right? Like, any gig where you're hiring an artist, or any opportunity you have where you can hire an artist and make sure you pay them. So I've been reframing a lot of those things in this moment to think about future action items that anyone can adopt, right? Everybody hosts parties. Can you hire a local artist rather than, or a local DJ rather than put on the radio, pay them $100, all of that. And I know that seems really small, but that's sort of the base of this sector. Could be little everyday choices we could make, just like buying local food or eating at local restaurants that are owned by people rather than eating at McDonald's. I would also say that there's definitely sort of some future opportunities around making sure that the arts are really known for what we're known for, right? So to reverse that idea that we don't know, we're invisible, and you could take advantage of the joy and the community building that the arts can do, and just make sure that we come back out of this resilient and connected and united in that understanding. Because this is it's almost like a test drill, right? It's kind of like, let's pull the fire drill, let's pretend what it would feel like, and let's make sure we don't make those mistakes moving forward. There's a couple specific things, Babs, that are kind of wonky, but I'd be curious what you think about this because of all the places you sit and the things you do. So I know a lot of groups, and we certainly support this, are encouraging anyone who bought a ticket or registered for a class or what have you to just don't ask for a refund, and we pick up the phone or send an email or get on Zoom or whatever and say, I don't need that money back. I want you to take that as a donation. Because so many of our organizations and individual artists, maybe you're going to buy something from an artist, just give them a call and say, you know what, I don't need that right now. Take it for what it is. Let's work on something later, because the cash crunch is really huge for a lot of groups.
I totally agree with that. Like I was saying earlier, a lot of artists right now and arts organizations and creative businesses and just businesses at large are having to now convert to a totally online platform, many of which are not used to that. Some of the artists, you see like the younger artists that are used to that, they've been doing this, right? So they're kind of like, they're able to adjust a little bit better. But other organizations and maybe people who are a little bit older, this is new for them, right? So how do we support them? How do we put resources behind them? There are free online streaming resources. There are virtual resources, people who are lowering their costs right now so that artists and arts businesses can tap into those businesses to be able to do Zoom, like what we're doing right now, to be able to do, happy hour, to keep it light, virtual happy hour, who are able to have lessons online and teach their master classes online. So we really need to start to tap into that and just encourage our businesses right now and give them the resources so that they're able to adjust and adapt during this time. I totally agree with you, Daniel. And I also I was thinking a little bit more about economic resiliency. So what does it look like once we get out of this? I feel that workforce is going to have to be a big, big factor. Getting back into the workforce, getting our artists and our creatives working again, making sure that our arts nonprofit organizations are staffed up with talent. They're going to need a tremendous amount of support in this area. So programs are going to need to be created statewide. Certain programs that exist in the state might need to be expanded to better serve artists and arts organizations. There's a lot that can be done. There's a lot of possibilities, right? But we can't do this without partnership and collaboration, cross-sector wise, to be able to expand in those different directions and really show the impact of the arts in different sectors.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in agreement with that. I think people who can donate their tickets should consider not getting that money back. But I understand that people need to get their money back because everybody's situation is a bit tenuous. Adrian, talk to me about the cities or municipalities' commitment to shoring up the arts community on top of, you're heading up the arts and cultural, but then there's also, the business people, there's also the restaurant people, there's also corporations, there's also the housing people. Like this particular moment in time, this is widespread. Like everybody can make the case that their whatever requires priority consideration.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the number one thing, especially last week, right, or when this first started happening, the number one thing was just making sure people were safe. Safety and health as the priority. So you'll see a lot of the focus being there for sure, and that's going to carry out until this is passed. Right now, we are all on a complete operations as normal has stopped, and everybody is on COVID-19 emergency duty. And we are within our own individual sectors and even cross-departmental trying to work on mitigating the damage of everything that's happening. Right now, I'll talk from an economic development standpoint because my department is under economic development. And so we're working on economic resiliency right now. And we just launched a campaign called Together New Haven. And what we're doing is highlighting different business owners, whether you are in the creative sector or whatever sector you are in, restaurants, hotels, whatever you're in. We have launched buying local and buying virtual. So every day we're highlighting different businesses who are now converting their businesses into virtual offerings or have gift cards available. And we're doing a widespread campaign of just sticking together during this time and being able to show the different offerings that people currently have. And so we launched that this weekend, and we are working with our different partners, such as New Haven, Visit New Haven, and Town Green, and all of these different people. Oh, and the Arts Council of Greater New Haven. Forget you. Yeah, so we're working together. They did a beautiful, they sent us a picture of them being connected virtually and just saying, we right now during this time, we stand together with our arts community. So getting those messages out there is tremendous with showing that we are supporting you. We're trying to find different ways to highlight your businesses during this time that even we were unprepared for. No one knew this was coming. So we're adjusting as well. So there's that, but then we're also working on different programs that are going to come out of the Together New Haven. So we're working right now with the Arts Council of Greater New Haven on a program that will be launched soon that will help artists and small arts businesses. So yeah, and this is going to be ongoing. We're going to continue to create different things that might be able to help support.
So Daniel, talk a little bit about, you're the executive director of the Arts Council of Greater New Haven. So that reach is not just New Haven proper. That is how many towns and cities that are under that umbrella?
Yeah, it's Milford to Madison to Meriden. So this is kind of shaped like this, going up 91 and 95. So yeah, I would add to that. So like one thing that we have 9 sister organizations across the state, including us. So regional arts councils that do similar types of work. And so a big part of this also comes from that. Like that network we have together and the network we have across the state with the Connecticut Arts Alliance, which is the advocacy organization for the arts in the state. So for instance, one thing we're working on together, and I should just shout out Wendy Berry at Southeastern Connecticut Cultural Coalition, she's organizing this part, but she helped to organize a sort of quantifying what the utility costs are for all of our arts institutions to be closed. Because people don't, as you might, when you like go on vacation, right? You still have to pay your water bill, and you can't just like shut all that off. And when you think about arts institutions, that's extra important because they also, a lot of them contain objects, right? So the museums have to actually maintain all of that amidst not being able to welcome any visitors to their facilities. So we've been organizing statewide to say to the state, utility regulation agencies that you should be giving us all a break on our utility bills during this time. Again, to hold us harmless. It's all these little pieces we can fight for together. I would say one other thing is, we've been able to get on calls, with our delegation, our state delegation, our state legislators, and our national legislators. We've also been communicating a lot with our philanthropists, our funders. We all share a lot of the same foundations and the same resources. And so we want to make sure they're getting all the data and information that we are receiving. One big point we're making on that is that, a lot of our individual artists have been encouraged to apply for unemployment. A lot of our arts organizations have been encouraged to apply for these loans. And I say yes to all these things. Like if you don't get in line today, the line's going to keep getting longer over the next couple of months. So if you think you need unemployment, just apply. If your institution or business thinks you're going to need a loan, there's ones through the Small Business Administration. The state's going to launch a bridge loan today. I would say just like you want to be first in line, you don't want to be last in line. There's a lot of details about that is unclear. And those are the conversations I'm having with the sort of state delegation and with our sort of other funding leaders in the community. Say, devil's in the details here. Are you really going to offer unemployment to a musician that lost a gig? It'd be great if
free
they did
transfers.
and want them in line to show that they're here to receive that and they need it. Are you really going to do a no interest bridge loan? Let's find out. But so again, it's sort of kind of balancing those mixed messages and also communicating that out in the region so that folks are really aware that, it really did happen. We got unemployment going to creative. We have equity loan programs helping to make sure our institutions are held harmless.
So are you in the place of, I think we're all sort of still shell shocked, and I'm not certain that we are thinking, although I'm starting to hear conversations about 3 months out, 6 months out, next year. I was listening to the news this morning, and Japan is making the decision about whether to postpone the Olympics, and the Olympics have been postponed 3 times in the history of the Olympics, and Tokyo, Japan, this is their second time being in that place of having to postpone. So I thought that was a weird sort of thing. So are you all thinking about 3 months out, 6 months out? Because this is going on. It's not just going to be in 2 weeks. This is going to be all gone. It seems like we're in for a good haul. Are you planning for that? Are you thinking about that? Is it too soon to be having conversations about future forward kind of things?
It's absolutely our job. Adrian's job is to begin thinking about that because, and if you think about it again, like our organizations are families, right? Like a lot of our families are going through a hard time. And so they have to retrench, right? They have to fold in, huddle up, figure out how are we going to get through the next 3 months, 6 months. It's survival mode. So our jobs, which is what's interesting about our jobs, is we get to think, well, let me think one step ahead of you. What will you need 6 months down the road, a year down the road? So we could try to build something before they need it. What do you think, Adrian?
No, I totally agree. I think that right now what we're doing is 2 things. We're dealing within the emergency situation, and we're trying to help as best right now with that. But then we're also planning ahead, like Daniel said. We have to plan ahead because we will come through this. And once we get through it, now we have to have solutions to the problem of how we rebuild. And so, like Daniel said, like he phrased it perfectly, that's where our attention needs to be right now.
And I'll give you one exact one, Babs. So like in my meetings, probably like for the last my in-person meetings, we need to come up with like a term for that. Like before shutdown, before everything was shut down, I feel like in a lot of in-person meetings, and think about the people I meet with, right? Like different artists, different funders, different donors, what have you. Over the last 3 weeks before shutdown, a couple of folks came to me and actually said, this is sort of interesting because I have an immune issue. And I'm always worried when I leave the house if I'm going to get sick. Or I have, elderly parents. And I'm always worried that when they go out, they're going to get sick. And if they're going to be one pneumonia away from, really getting fatally sick. So I've been really inspired to think about like what this means from a public health perspective for all of our venues, right? So the arts, especially, like if we're in the business of bringing people together, which we are, that is essentially what we do, then what does bringing people together mean now that we've experienced what it feels like to have a pandemic like this? So, a lot of our groups, right, in the weeks leading up, we're saying things like, starting now, our trumpet teachers are going to wash their hands between lessons. And I'm thinking, well, that's a good idea. Why aren't we always washing our hands between teaching? When we were at the Longworth thing, right? They're saying, we've made sure all of our staff have paid sick leave.
Yes.
We don't want them to get you sick while they're taking your ticket. Like we want that anyways, right? So I think there's a big sort of, there's a front of house kind of like public health. How do we think about our spaces? How do we make our spaces accessible accessible to people who should be worried about their own sort of viral health? And then also on the back end, how do we help our employees have sick leave, have paid family leave, have the types of working environments where they can work from home as often as they feel like it? So I see a sort of emerging conversation about those aspects of the front and the back end of our institutions. Again, we need to think about the cost of all that, and we need to think about, what that means in our workplace, because we don't want to all of a sudden then spin a, maybe a little bit too global, and we forget how important it is to be local with our employees. But we forget that there's going to be some level of risk when you leave your home, but how do we mitigate that when people come to our theaters and museums?
You're making me think of, Daniel, your statement is just making me think of an emergency preparedness program, right? How are our arts institutions implementing, or how can we coach them on and train them on implementing emergencies around this, right? We have emergencies for hurricanes, we have emergencies for lockdown situations, we have these plans. We need to now have plans in place for health epidemics like this.
And I would question, do we have those plans? I mean, a lot of our institutions at a certain level do have those plans, right? And they could be teaching our smaller venues and organizations how to adapt those plans to their institutions as well. Because, when you are a small arts organization, you probably don't have a lot of excess time to think about your active shooter plan or think about your public health plan. But if we work together, we could probably come up with some good guidelines on that.
I agree.
Ones I saw, and I wanted to shout this out, was Fractured Atlas, which is a national organization. They built a really cool guide for how to fundraise during COVID-19. So it has all these templates and language and ideas to talk to your funders, and they mean that broadly for individual artists and institutions, to talk about what you really need to get through this crisis. Because again, it's such an interesting sector, because we're not just funded by ticket sales or earned revenue. We have this big base of support that comes from individuals. So how do you talk about the fact that you're in dire straits right now and you really just need money to pay rent? And so it's a really cool guide they put up there. We posted it on our site too, but I just thought that was such a smart way of aggregating that fear of fundraising put together, that fear of COVID-19, and they really solved for that.
I mean, I get the sense that this pandemic has illuminated where the holes are, or the fragility of the arts community is. How I don't think we think how fragile artist life is if they can't get these gigs, if they can't show their art, if they can't have places to perform, if they can't teach or whatever. That there's a fragility there that I think we've just not been exposed to or aware of, because we are so used to seeing artists, they're going to gig, they're going to go from show to show, and then they're going to do all right. So now they're in this place where that's been taken away, and we see where the holes are, the breaking points are, the tension is. And so speak a little bit to, I get the sense, Adrienne, that you are very optimistic about coming through this with a plan that will address some of these holes. And I think you too, Dan, because this will come back around again. Like, I don't think this is the last time we will be in a place where things get shut down.
Right. But this will hopefully be the last time where we will be this unprepared, right? Like, so now, like Daniel just said, we're going to put things in place where it is common practice, right? Best practice. What does it look like in a national emergency, such as what we're seeing right now? So now we're able to plan ahead if this were to happen again. When this comes back around, how do we get our artist community, our arts ecosystem prepared? It's definitely something that's going to be on the forefront of anything I plan. Now I'm going to incorporate that somehow, because again, this was something that I don't think any of us saw coming. But to your point about musicians and gigging, the gig economy is being hit hard. As we said earlier on, probably one of the industries that's being hit hard the most, also because of the resources that they're not able to tap into now, because of the fact that, can they get unemployment? I don't know, because of the fact that they are contractual. They're not necessarily employees of any particular institution or business. So I think encouraging our artists that are definitely gigging artists who are not attached to any type of organization, showing them relief funds and different resources that are out there. There are many relief funds that have been created right now, both nationally through different arts organizations, that I would definitely highly encourage people to tap into. The only thing is with that is everyone's tapping into it right now in the world. Everyone's trying to tap into these resources. So now those resources are getting depleted very, very quickly. So we need more people to donate it donate to these causes so that we can keep our artists, we can support our artists during this very difficult time. Because I think that sometimes people don't realize artists have families at home, right? Just like everybody else. Artists are trying to keep food on the table, just like everyone else. This is their bread and butter. And if they're not making money, then they can't sustain, they cannot survive. So we really need to be thinking about how are we helping support them and all of the different things that are being impacted on them right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'm just picked it up again to make sure I said it right. Todd Lyon from Fashionista. She just before we got on the air, she said it took a pandemic to do this, ... But there's so many things that already get me excited and I'm optimistic by. Like it took me a pandemic to realize. In the case of Fashionista, which is an arts business if there ever was one, she was like, we're on Etsy now. We finally decided we're going to post our items on Etsy. We're going to sell on Etsy, right? How cool is that, right? I would shout out, Alexis Robbins and Isabella Mendez. They got right on it right away. They were teaching classes online. They were starting groups to organize. Like, they were a perfect example of where, like, you can't stop artists. Like, artists don't wait for the program to launch, right? Artists, they just,
right.
And I think especially that's inspiring for artists who may be, less extroverted than that or less savvy than that to go for it. I also loved, I don't know who else. Oh, so I mean, in my life, my daughter takes violin lessons at Suzuki Music Schools. And so we didn't skip a week. We had our first video violin lesson and she was great. Both the teacher and my daughter, like they did a great thing. And like, that continuity was so helpful and important. And I could see doing that anytime she's not feeling well or the teacher's not feeling well or what have you. Like it was a pretty portable kind of experience. So I feel like all these little things we're learning how to do. Now, we're not necessarily learning how to monetize them yet, but that will come, right? What I think is interesting is that folks are just going for it. Like we're getting comfortable being on video. We're being comfortable building online stores. We're getting excited about our plan B, which is to do like a virtual fundraiser rather than sit there and eat the rubber chicken at the gala. So, I mean, there's no sector that's, at the same time, there's no sector that's getting hit harder than ours. There's also no sector that's more ready than ours to come out on the other side.
Yes, I agree. And to your point, I love what Chris Randall has done with this whole Porch Ritz concept of drive-by shootings, taking drive-by shootings to a whole other level and changing the narrative around that. I so appreciate him.
I would be remiss if I did not shout out People Get Ready, because like nothing brings me more joy every day than when I scroll on and I see the People Get Ready, whatever they posted, whether they're like sanitizing books and throwing them in their Dropbox or reading in Spanish and English. I mean, as you all have seen, I mean, Lucy Gelman and the folks at the Arts Paper have been busier than ever documenting the resilience
and
the immediate.
And I think that's been quite healing. I find it to be, because when you are isolated at home, you cannot, as someone who is as social as I am, I found it quite daunting. And it really took Chris Randall coming by to really open up the door for me to like go to social media. I mean, use social media as cocktail parties and DJ D-Nice parties and and all of that.
We could have done before, but now we have to. So
right, exactly.
Right.
I think once we're through this, some of this will still remain, right? So people are having fun with the virtual happy hours and the karaoke, the online kind of karaoke, like different ways you can have fun when you're just in the house. And it also is encouraging a lot of our business community to build up their online presence and their social media presence, which some businesses struggle with tremendously. So now, like, people have no choice. So I don't think we will come out of this the same. And I mean that in a positive way. I actually mean that in a positive way. The use of technology, the fact that we live in a technology-driven world, and we have to get with it. And I'm glad for technology right now, because without technology, we wouldn't be able to communicate during this time.
Yeah.
Yes.
And here's like one other story about that. Babs, you know Rachel Mealy, one of our board members. Shout out to Rachel.
Yes.
She was telling me that I mentioned to her the violin lesson story, and she said, my son has been taking virtual harmonica lessons for 5 years. how did that happen? And she said, well, I called around and I couldn't find anyone to teach him. So I just Googled it and here's what I found. He doesn't live in this area, but it's all I could find. And in my head, I was like, oh, well, there's got to be some local people here who can teach harmonica, but she couldn't find them, right? It wasn't possible. So I one of the sort of feelings we're trying to talk about is definitely investing local, but also encouraging our locals to think global, right? Think of all the different gigs and opportunities folks can monetize when they're live streaming their exhibit all around the world, or when they're doing a dance video and it travels all throughout the world, right? Living digitally and investing locally. And I think that's where institutions can come in and be really helpful to sort of, I don't curate feels too strong, but to kind of amplify that, right? So, as we move forward and the gig economy becomes even bigger than it probably was before the pandemic, institutions need to come in and be a sort of trusted container around which you can aggregate all of this amazing talent and resource into this global world that we're going to be in. So I'd like to think that like our institutions, as much as we've been saying this for a long time, will become global institutions, right? We will globally know about the local arts organizations we've always come to love because they're curating amazing content that's going all around the world.
Yes. Well, thank you all so much for joining me this morning. I think this was an important conversation because I feel very strongly about the arts community and this is hurting them and they are hurting and I've never seen this before. And so, when I saw the lights go out on Broadway, it really was,
it hit. Yeah.
Yes, it really was quite telling because I just never seen that before. And then when, show after show had to shut down and hard decisions had to be made, it really was something to behold. But, having this conversation today, I feel quite optimistic. I mean, this is very personal to me. I feel very optimistic that we will indeed emerge from this moment in time better, stronger, a much more cohesive arts community than ever before.
Can I
thank you all
thing before you kick us off, Babs?
Yes,
this week. No, so we had all these events planned this week. Our Member Appreciation Week, March Member.
Yes.
So we bought all these gift cards to all these places we were going to take you, and whatever. We just turned it all online. So I just want to say, go to our Instagram or go to our Facebook page, and every day there's going to be a little contest or a prompt or a question, and we're also doing a lot of giveaways. So I'm not entitled to tell you what the question is.
That's cool.
But you could go into our social and do that. But I know the prizes are People Get Ready gift certificate, Long Wharf Theater vouchers, and Monjares gift certificates. So
those are all good.
Yes, that's awesome.
They're all going to be available, to your gift cards at some time in the next couple of months. But if you go and you play with us this week digitally, then you could win some of that stuff, some of that swag.
Well, I like that, and I encourage people to go over to the Arts Council page. Adrienne Jefferson, it was a pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Adrienne is my sorority sister, which I am pleased and delighted to say that. And welcome.
What'd you say?
Pardon?
You have to have Adrienne on again for a whole 50 minutes, just you two.
Oh, I do.
Oh, anytime. Let me know. Anytime at all. This was great. Thank you so much.
No, I think it's good for the arts community to see two leaders of the arts community talking about these very important matters.
We talk a lot.
We do. And we're definitely on the same page.
Well, thank y'all. Enjoy the rest of your day. And I will see y'all on these internet streets, these social media streets in a little while.
So, streets.
Thank you. Harry, play us out, Harry. Arts to the future, arts to the future. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Love Babs Love Talk on WNHH LP 103.5 FM, your home for community radio.
Are we off? Oh, yeah, we're off.
We're gone. It's just us.
Oh, is it just us? We still have the...
Oh, it's not just us. That's it. See ya.
We have to leave the meeting. How do you do that?
Are you going on the 11:30, I assume?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. Because technically we haven't... Should we I'm like, I'm gonna Zoom you on our own. I'm gonna Zoom you.